Welcome to Realty Coffee Talk. Tonight, my name is Tahir. I'm a fellow Real Estate of Canada and broker of record for City Pro Realty Inc. brokerage. Tonight, we're going to talk about big changes in real estate profession. As you know, the REBA will become TRESA on April 1st, 2023. What are the big changes? Real Estate Council of Ontario, the regulator on behalf of the Ontario government, who regulate the real estate profession in Ontario, has put out videos. There are one or two videos, and I think third video is also coming. They talk about the real changes. So we're going to talk about few to explain best of my ability. The first change that is coming here, the definition of a customer. Now, we remember we used to have a client and a customer. So TRESA will eliminate customer. That means either a client that you will be representing, or it will be a self-represented party. So do not understand or do not follow this that customer has been replaced. Customer is no longer being used. Either a consumer is a client or is a self-represented party. Okay, so when you have an existing agreement with the customer, after the TRESA become effective, within 120 days, automatically it will terminate itself. So we don't have any more customer as of April 1st. So it will be self-respected party, representative party, or you will have a client. So now what is a client? Under the TRESA, client is a person receives services from the brokerage and they are represented by the brokerage. You have either seller representation agreement or buyer representation agreement. Okay, so they are clients. Okay? Now you protect them because of your agreement. Under General Regulation subsection 1 of 1, that definition of client is defined there. You can go and click on that on the website, reco.on.ca, explain you that. So you understand who the client is. A self-represented party is a party who is not a client of a brokerage with respect to a trade in real estate. This means the person has chosen not to receive services from a registrant, which is salesperson, broker, or brokerage, and chosen to represent themselves in the trade in real estate. Some individuals have chosen to do that over the years. People used to say that we want to represent ourselves. Now they have that freedom. Under TRESA, registrants are prohibited from providing services, opinions, or advice to a self-representative party because you're representing a client. So registrants are permitted to provide assistance to a self-representative party in respect of a trade after the registrant provide both the mandatory RECO information guide. So we are expecting a 10-page guideline from RECO that to be distributed to the buyer or the seller, whoever is the party. Even the third self-represented party, you have to tell them so they understand that and they should acknowledge. This is going to replace working with a realtor that we have been using in the past so many years. It's very detail-oriented. So we're waiting for that document to come from RICO so we can share it. And the mandatory RICO information disclosure to self-represented party, because self-represented party has declared that I want to be self-represented party. Right. So this guideline will provide a very clarity to avoid any confusion by the consumer. The self-represented party must be a service or incidental to a service provided to the registrant client and promote and protect the best interests of the client. So when you are assisting or you are giving some information required by law to the third party, third self-represented party, you still have to protect the registrant, client of registrant. Not include advice or opinion. You cannot give advice and opinion to the self-represented party, and not encourage the self-represented party to rely on the registrant knowledge, skills, or judgment. That means they need to use their own judgment. We as the registrars are not obligated to provide any assistance to the self-represented party. Any assistance provided is a service to the registrant client and would fall under the representation agreement with the client, whether it's a BRA or seller representation agreement. So regarding that, you can also look at the TRESA subsection 1/1, definition of seller represented party, general regulation 1/5 for prescribed criteria. They are defined now in TRESA, and general regulation subdivision 1.6 for exception to employee representation agreement, and Code of Ethics Regulation Section 10, dealings with self-represented parties. So I request all our real estate professionals to go down and download this information, because on the 1st of April, you better be ready to comply with this new law. This is very important. Now, about the RICO information guideline. Under TRESA, a registrant must provide the RICO information guideline to potential client prior to entering into an agreement or providing any service to a client. The new obligation replaces what is Section 10 of the Code of Ethics Regulation under REBA that must provide to a buyer or seller before entering into agreement. That means working with the realtor form that we've been using. So RICO information package must also be provided to a self-represented party. Not only you present to the buyer or seller client, but you also give it to that third self-represented party also. Salesperson must also explain the content of the guide before providing any service or assistance. So that means you need to educate your client, either buyer or seller, so they understand what type of relationship now, so they can make a decision. Now, under General Regulation Section 13, Information Guide, you need to read that. And also General Regulation Section 13.1, Information to Self-Represented Parties. So RICO has done a very thorough job to prepare you to read this, give you all explanation, the videos. So you as a real estate professional must go read that, because you are going to be called by a consumer regarding a property. You need to know what step that you have to take to honor that. This is very, very important. Now, next one is the content of representation agreement. The new requirement related to the content of representation with clients are introduced. Now, currently we have an agreement with the client, which includes amount the client agrees to pay. This has to do with the commission. And in this case, an agreement with the seller, the amount the client pays to another brokerage involved in transaction. Agreement must also clarify comprehensively and prominently set out the required information. Remember, when we sign an agreement for listing agreement, we say total commission will be 3.5%, and we give 2.5% to the cooperating broker. We keep 1% of listing broker. We always say that. But that means the total commission, 3.5, is the obligation of the seller. But they want to make sure if that's going to be happening, that's what is going to happen, because you're not going to have you're going to have a self-represented party who is not going to be involved. So you have to provide more clarity in terms of composition, that 3.5% will be your commission and how you're going to distribute it. Or if self-represented party comes into the picture, they make the deal if there's any adjustment. So basically, you're going to be using a Schedule A in your listing to provide as much clarity possible so the consumer understands when they're doing a listing agreement or buying agreement. They are very clarified. So whatever circumstances are. So you look at the general regulations, section 13.4, content of written agreement, it talks about the more clarity. Who is going to pay what, how much, when, and it well described. So I notice lots of people don't add Schedule A to the listing or by BRA. I recommend that you do that. This is very, very important. Now, the other thing is about disclosure. This has been a big issue, disclosure, consent, and acknowledgement. So this talk about the TRISA, the new requirement apply to all mandatory disclosures, consent, and acknowledgement. They must be in writing in a plain English, clear and concise, represented in a manner that brings to the recipient's attention the information is required to be conveyed. Clarity, simplicity, and very clear. And disclosure must be identified by the prominent place of word disclosure. That means you are disclosing it. So disclosure will happen is in BRA, for example, oh, you're going to get a referral fee because you arrange a mortgage. Remember, we have a mortgage. If we get a referral fee, we have a form, I believe is a 144 or 244 that talks about the benefit because you're getting some kind of a commission back or referral fee. And that amount, where is coming from, with regard to which property that you are collecting. Sometimes we don't do real estate transactions, but the people will ask us, can you get me a mortgage? Can you make me a recommendation to somebody? And then if you expect that, there's going to be some compensation coming to you to make sure that you disclose that. This is very important. So consent, disclosure, or you have a family member buying a property, brother or sister or wife, disclose that. This is very important before a buyer or seller make a decision about transaction. You need to disclose them because timing is very important. Now, consent is also, you need to get the consent. Particularly, I have noticed that when the people have sold the property, they don't get buyer or seller consent. There's guidelines on that. You should get a consent. How long can you advertise? What you can advertise? Therefore, it's very important that consent is obtained. Multiple representation. Remember, the consent is required. I recommend that you take the multiple representation consent before you put an offer. Therefore, the both party has given you consent. In our listing, what we have done is we put in Schedule A. He said the seller is giving me the consent to go ahead and be a buyer broker if someone interested to be our client. I don't use customer anyway. I want to bring both buyer and seller the same level of service. So full disclosure to both buyer and seller. So therefore, adding that clause into the Schedule A of your listing agreement say that I have the consent from the seller to the buyer that no objection in terms of securing a buyer representation. With this, it will help you if you're going to reduce some commission to the seller. Now, because of TRISA, if the buyer doesn't want to be represented and they are self-represented party, that's okay. You may also add that if there is a multiple representation, I reduce this. If there is no representation on the buyer side, then my commission will be so much. It provides more clarity and also give you permission from the seller to go ahead and arrange that. The only important thing is the disclosure. Now, and the disclosure of, and this talks about the general regulation section 2.2 of disclosure. This is very important to pay attention. I'm mentioning this paragraph for you as a realtor to go down and download this information. Now, disclosure of multiple representation and client consent. Brokers continue to be prohibited from representing more than one client in a trade unless the required written disclosure is made, and after disclosure is received, each of the existing prospect client consent to multiple representation. This was allowed before, it's going to continue to be allowed. Make sure before you put the offer down, get that consent in writing. Disclose it and get that consent. Now in this case, under TRISA, a required disclosure must include the following. The fact that the brokerage is proposing to represent more than one client in trade, which we always did that. The difference between the duties and obligations the brokerage would have if it represents only one client in respect of the trade, and brokerage duties and obligation if it represents more than one client in respect of trade. More specifically, difference relating to the obligation and duties the brokerage would owe to the client. Services the brokerage would provide to the client and remuneration arrangement. It all comes down to the money. It all comes to type of service. So since the customer service is out, now you're going to bring, if the consumer like to become your client and represent a buyer, you have consent from both of them before you consider putting an offer. So you are sharing all the same information for both of them. If third party is a self-represented, you need to protect your client. You only share information that is required or to be given by law. You can't lie. You be honest, but you're not giving any opinion, no suggestion, no information, anything. You just give general information that is required by law. Okay? Now this relates to General Regulation Section 22, multiple representation, and also General Regulation 2.2, disclosure. So you have to read these regulations now. This is mandatory. It's coming to law on 1st of April. So you better read that. Sharing content of competing offer. This is a big change here. Under TRISA, if the seller directs the registrant, is permitted to share the content of the competing written offers with every person who is making one of the offers. The seller may also direct that only parts of the offer be shared. Any offer information that is shared must not include any personal or identifying information. So that means now law is allowing us, provided that you have a written instruction from the seller when you are in a multiple situation. So you be careful. You're not sharing a personal information or identify information. You're only sharing information what is allowed. You can't identify a person. Okay. Now, for example, this is the RICO website. RICO is giving example that if instructor the seller tell you to disclose this information, as the time comes in and seller withdraw the consent, and you immediately withdraw that. You don't have to follow it because they change their mind. And this is all based on written. Make sure it's written instruction that you have received to share the information. And also, a registrant, which is a salesperson or broker record, should also advise their buyer client that the seller is at liberty to change their mind about sharing offer information. So not only this, let's say seller agent notify the buyers, yes, I can share some information to you on so and so date because I have instruction from the seller. But then the seller changed their mind not to disclose that. So he shared the same information with the buyer agent also. Then buyer agent need to educate their buyer client that this is a prerogative of the seller to share or not to share or change their mind. So don't complain about that. So that talks about you need to read General Regulation 22.7 competing offers and General Regulation Section 2.2 disclosure etc. This is important. Now we talk about material facts. I'm at the RICO website. This is where the RICO information is there. 3SA is a new obligation for registrants to advise a client to consider the impact of material facts on their decision to acquire or dispose of an interest in real estate. This is an addition to registrant existing obligation. Under 3SA, take reasonable steps to determine the material facts related to acquisition or disposition of an interest in a real estate. Disclose the material facts to the client as soon as possible after determination. This is fact, and this is under General Regulation Section 22.1, material facts. So it appears to me the code of ethics we used under REBA, Section 21, was the material facts, is being moved to General Regulation under 22.1, material facts. Now, General Regulation Section 2.2, disclosure. So this has become more stricter now in the regulation, even though they were under Regulation 580/5 under Section 21, material facts. So they are now moved to the regulation side. So facts a seller has a legal obligation to disclose. You know, we always have a situation where seller doesn't want to disclose. You have to make a decision. Either you take the list or you walk away from the business, because you cannot infringe REBA or any law by not disclosing information. So now under TRISA, a new obligation is introduced that requires registrant representing a seller to disclose facts to the buyer, potential buyer, if those facts are known to the registrant. And one side, TRISA is establishing you to find the material facts, because that's you are providing a professional services. On the other side, they're obligating to you to disclose that to the potential buyer, because those are going to be legally required to disclose. And these are facts that would make a property uninhabitable, dangerous or potentially dangerous. You know, sometimes you have a grow house, you have a pollution in the house, and fungus or other things that somebody or the seller doesn't want to disclose, they've been hiding. And you can feel that, you can smell it. But if you discover that, you must disclose, because it's required under law. Now, under section Government Regulation 22.2, disclosure of facts by the seller's broker or salesperson, they're putting a mandate on the seller's broker or the agent. Under General Regulation Section 2.2, disclosure, again, it repeats that. Now, you can hide if something is wrong, which render the property inhabitable. This is why it's very important for you to disclose that. And this all is explained in our video one from RICO. Sorry. The existing obligation, disclosure of property interest, you know, acquisition of the property, disposition of the property, we always disclose that. You got to disclose that in time. So before you make the decision to buy or sell, you disclose that. And General Regulation Section 22.9, disclosure of interest, or General Regulation Section 2.2, disclosure etc. You have to disclose that. Is acquisition or disposition of property, you have to disclose that. Now you have a disclosure of direct or indirect financial benefit. This is very important. You know, the Teresa is getting more clear, very specific. There was a lot of generality in the REBA. Now it is becoming more specific. So you cannot say, I didn't know that. Go read the regulation. This specific content requires for the mandatory disclosure about a financial benefit are introduced. Under Teresa, the disclosure must include the description of financial benefit, including indication whether the financial benefit is direct or indirect, or an estimate of value of the financial benefit. For example, I'm a principal broker and I can express mortgage, okay? I have a license. I make a referral to someone and I get paid because let's say I'm not dealing with the mortgage and I have somebody else who can do a better job than me. I make a referral, but I will finish their form and disclose it and tell them, okay, I'm going to get 0.5% of the amount that you do. So you're talking about amount or a percentage of the amount of the mortgage amount, and who is going to pay? Is going to bank, whatever the bank name is or the lender is going to pay. When they're going to pay, when the deal is closed, regarding what? A specific property. And they mention that. And therefore, this is a disclosure that you describe. And also a description of condition of any under which the financial benefit would be provided. Sometimes you don't do deal in real estate and you make a referral to somebody some lender to make a donation, and all of a sudden you get a check come into your brokerage. That means you have to disclose that. You should have disclosed that before the money comes to the brokerage. A little bit late, but it has to be done before the benefit arrives. So also you have to describe the relationship. Who are these people? I have no relationship with any bank. They're all professional. But I received a commission because of referral fee. Therefore, I disclose it. Okay. And even though you may not get commission or referral fee, but there is a potential that you might get, you disclose it. And this regulation, General Regulation Section 23.1, disclosure of financial benefit, there is only a form, I believe is 244, that you have to look at that. There's a form of benefit. You will talk about that. You get that. Or General Regulation 2.2 disclosure, read that. This is very important. Now, Code of Ethics. Code of Ethics regulation includes amended new provision. Many provisions have been moved from Code of Ethics to the regulation. And some are the same, some are changed. So Ontario Code of Ethics Regulation 365-2, that's the new one under Teresa. Code of Ethics Regulation, Ontario Regulation 365-2. It used to be Ontario Regulation 580/5. Now Ontario Regulation 365/22. Conflict of interest. This is a big thing. I just passed my private lending examination because I'm a principal broker. I have to pass this exam to make sure I'm providing private lending. So disclosure is a big thing. Conflict of interest is a big thing because before a lender give you money, before a buyer sign a commitment, disclosure. Whether it's a conflict of interest or benefit is concerned, you have to disclose that. This is very important. So now the new Code of Ethics Regulation introduces a requirement to disclose an existing or potential conflict of interest under new code. For example, if my son wants to buy a property that listed by ABC brokerage, I have to disclose that the buyer is my son. What's wrong with that? He's going to pay the same money or anybody else. Only thing is my duty to report that he is my son and he is buying this property. I personally have no interest in the property. My son is buying the property. I do not have any interest, direct, indirect, the property, except that my son is buying the property. That's why disclosure is very important. So when seller don't care whether it's money coming from my son or anybody, as this is your obligation as a professional to disclose that. Now, under TRISA, that conflict of interest under new code, registrars are prohibited from providing or continuing to provide service to a client or prospective client where the interest of the registrant conflict or may conflict with the interest of the client unless the registrant has made the required disclosure. Advise the client or prospective client to seek independent professional advice with respect to a disclosure. For example, you have a lawyer, is a family member. You have to disclose that. Inspector, appraiser, somehow they are related to you. Disclose that. And these are the things to provide more clarity to all of us. RICO have done an amazing job. They provide so clear. Nobody say, I don't understand this. Simple English. Go read it. This is so important. So I request all viewers who are watching this program to go to RICO, reco.on.ca and look for big changes to the RIBA. It's called TRISA Explained. Go there and avoid that. This is for realtor. It is for the consumer. Particularly, we're talking about realtors because we are the one who have to make the disclosures. Okay, so this is a very important for all of us to we follow the law because this is the best interest because their goal is to protect the consumer. This is why it's very important that we're talking about it. So now, so if you have any type of relationship, disclose it and explain clear, simple. And General Regulation Section 23.1, disclosure of financial benefit, and General Regulation Section 2.2, disclosure is required. New Code of Ethics Regulation. Okay, we were talking about that. So that's the Code of Ethics Regulation, Regulation 365/22. Conflict of interest, we talk about it. Disclose it. Pay written consent from the client or prospective client to provision of the registrant services despite conflict, or you get them to acknowledge that you have a conflict of interest, they still want you to provide the service, you get them consent. Now, this is talk about Code of Ethics Regulation, Section 13, conflicts, and General Regulation, Section 2.2, disclosure. No obstruction. That's another provision we talk about. The new Code of Ethics Regulation explicitly prohibit a registrar from obstructing or attempting to obstruct administration or attempted administration of the legislation. This is serious, my friend. Under new Code of Ethics, the registrar must not obstruct or attempt to obstruct any person from making a complaint to RICO or obstruct or attempt to obstruct RICO from receiving accurate or complete information. What they're saying is, if somebody has a complaint against you, you're not going to obstruct them not to go to RICO and submit your report. And RICO, registrant must not include or attempt to introduce a person to withdraw a complaint made to RICO about the registrant. Remember, it used to be though you facilitate that, don't go to RICO, I'll compensate you, blah, blah, blah. No more. You are obstructing a consumer to report to you to RICO because they are consumer protection agency. We as registrars are supposed to follow the law. The RIBA needed some improvement, and you can see that TRISA is providing that more clarity. RICO have done an amazing job to explain that. So, majority of all of us, we do it. There are few people who does bad things and we end up in complaints. So, registrant may continue to engage in mediation, settlement, discussion, negotiation, or arbitration to resolve a dispute. But any agreement to resolve a dispute must not include a requirement to withdraw or refrain from making a complaint made to RICO. So that means you can resolve a issue, mediate with that, but you cannot ask them to withdraw application complaint to the RICO. The Code of Ethics Regulation, Section 15, no obstruction. This is very serious. Now we talk about protection of real estate. Under treaty, a registrant must not provide any person with access to real estate unless the registrant is present with the person or the owner of the real estate has consented in writing to the person having access without registrant being consent. So that means you cannot give the code, lockbox code to your client. You have to be present. Unless sellers say, I give you permission in writing, then you can allow it. Most likely you're talking about after the deal has been firm, maybe one day before closing. I always attend my inspection. Every time anyone to access my listing that I have listed or our broker listed, our agent has to be there to attend to it unless it's requested by the cooperating broker. This is very, very important. Or in this case, Teresa saying that if seller allows you to consent you to allow someone to go and visit it, then it's fine. And this talks about the General Regulation Section 22.5, protection of the property. This is on RICO website. You can download that information. Now, another thing is discipline committee. The scope of the discipline committee will be broadened now under TRISA. The discipline committee will have authority to deal with allegation of contravention of TRISA and all regulation, not just the Code of Ethics regulation. They have broadened the scope of the disciplinary committee. New power of the discipline committee include authority to apply condition to a registration, suspend a registration, revoke a registration if in the committee's opinion the registrant is not entitled to be registered under Section 10 of the Act. So these are the extra power that disciplinary committee will have now. Allegations related to misconduct that occurred prior to the date of TRISA came into force will continue to be addressed under REBA and it reads before that date. So anything that would happen before REBA, it will continue under REBA, but after 1st April, it's going to be under TRISA. Now, the second part, information for the brokerage, this is also shared on the RICO website, unclaimed trust funds. But now they are very clearly saying that under TRISA, all unclaimed funds, trust funds, including trust fund held on behalf of a person who cannot be located, are to be submitted to RICO after 2 years. The change aligns with the timing of submission of any unclaimed trust fund to RICO. So under Section TRISA, subsection 27.5 regarding unclaimed trust fund, that means after 2 years, if nobody claimed those funds, then you transfer them to RICO. This is the responsibility of the complying officer as the broker record of the company, like I am broker record for city property broker. Okay. Notification of financial circumstances. Under TRISA, brokers are required to promptly notify RICO in writing if any of the following circumstances occurs. The broker's liability exceed the realizable value of the asset, or the broker is unable to pay its liabilities as they become due. Any insolvency proceeding is commenced by and against brokerage, or the brokerage is in receipt of knowledge that such an insolvency proceeding is imminent. A court order or judgment is made against the brokerage in relation to trading in real estate or misappropriation, fraud, or breach of trust. General Regulation Section 31.2, notification of financial circumstances. Mostly complying officer broker record is responsible to report to RICO, and under TRISA now, this is mandatory. shortfall and missing property. Under TRISA, brokers are required to notify RICO of any instances of shortfall in the trust account and any missing property held in trust. Under TRISA, REBA, and under TRISA, Section 27, not a single penny can be removed from real estate trust account. There are three standard protocols. When the funds are deposited into real estate trust account under a agreement of purchase and sale and is a conditional subject to financing, if financing is not secure or inspection found some irregularity, the both party cannot reconcile, and they sign a mutual release by the buyer, seller, listing broker, and cooperating broker, then funds are disbursed to the buyer. If the deal is firm, those funds, in addition, a statement of invoice is sent to the listing brokerage lawyer, a seller's lawyer. And if there are surplus funds, once the transaction has been completed, those funds are transmitted to the seller. If they are short of funds, then invoice is sent to the lawyer. Lawyer will submit the balance of the commission, and you transfer the funds from commission trust account to real estate trust account to commission trust account. After receiving instruction that from the lawyer, that transaction has been completed. Third, court order. If both parties, buyer and sellers, are in dispute, the matter goes to the court. When the court decides it, then you make the disturbance. I have a case, it exceeded more than 2 and 3 years. So when RICO came to my office for inspection, I told them this is in litigation. He said, no problem. As long as litigation, stay the money there. If they decide yes or no, you will act accordingly. So later on, they signed a mutual agree and they made the settlement. The court issued the order, the funds were released. This is why it's very, very important. Now, education, it talks about educational requirement, insurance record, and other matter regulation, section 14 shortfall. This covers that. So you need to read this section. Additional record. Under TRISA, a brokerage must make such record as are reasonably required for the conduct of the brokerage business of trading in real estate, in addition to record required under to be required under the legislation. Education requirement, insurance, record, and other matter regulation, section 18, additional record. This is required. And RICO information. Under TRISA, RICO has the authority to request information from a registrant or a group of registrant for the purpose related to registration. This may subject to the regulation include a request for information about a trade in real estate. If the purpose of the collection about the trade is exercise a power of duty related to administration of the act or the regulation. Further regulatory oversight, including assessing trends in the information that may impact compliance and enforcement activities. Further, consumer and education and awareness regarding advancement of consumer protection and a fair, safe, and informed real estate market. Or further, registration, education, and awareness regarding roles and responsibility under the REBA of real estate broker and brokerage and agent. For example, RICO may begin collecting information related to the number and type of transaction, details of money held in trust, and other information to support a risk-based approach to regulation and to fulfill its regulatory oversight. RICO will provide registrant with advance notice of information to it intends to collect and inform in the form in which it must be provided. So for the inquiries, please contact RICO information at ricoon.ca or call 1-800-245-6910. Friends, the purpose of this program today was to increase awareness about changes, big changes that are coming from Reba to Teresa effective April 1st. If you have any question, please write to info@rico.on.ca or call 1-800-245-6910. My name is Tahir Qureshi. I'm a fellow Rules Institute of Canada, broker of record for City Realty in Brooklyn. I'll be more than happy to call me. My number is 416-451-3489. To watch this program, a real estate and mortgage program, you go to YouTube and look for Tahir Qureshi Realty Coffee Talk. Or you can visit realtycoffeetalk.com and subscribe to my YouTube channel. Make sure you are making informed decision and you are helping consumer to make informed decision. Our responsibility is to protect consumer interest. We are a registrant. We have a legal, moral, and ethical obligation to act diligently, respectfully, honestly, with dignity, with competency, with integrity and professionalism. Thank you for watching. For next episode, look for me on Realty Coffee Talk on Awaz Entertainment Canada around the world. Thank you. Bye for now.